Butter's over $3. I kind of laughed and I said, well, that's kind of reductive, isn't it? Said it to myself. To him, I smiled and I said, good point. But it actually, what everything we're hearing after the election is,
I'm just saying, the $7.
What's that?
The $7.
What's that? Butter is $7?
Yeah.
Earlier this morning on MSNBC Morning Joe, something amazing happened. Something incredible happened. I'm just going to let you watch it first, and then we'll discuss. I need you to take a look at this. It's unbelievable.
I want to talk about economy for a second. A few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, somebody who was going to be voting for Kamala Harris came up to me and said, oh, my God, Trump's going to win. I go, why is that? He goes, I went to the grocery store. Butter's over $3. I kind of laughed and I said, well, that's kind of reductive, isn't it? Said it to myself. To him, I smiled and I said, good point. But it actually, what everything we're hearing after the election is,
I'm just saying, the $7.
What's that?
The $7.
What's that? Butter is $7?
Yeah.
What? Is it framed in gold? Okay. Anyway,
depends on where you go. But,
okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, my point is this, Willie. The rent is too damn high, and this guy was saying the cost of butter is way damn too high.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a bit reductive. It ended up being just the point that if you look at the cost of groceries, if you look at the cost of gas, if you look at the cost of things compared to 4 years ago, it was a very simple answer for working class Americans. Things just cost too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it. By the way, $7.
This is the greatest clip I've seen post-election on so many levels. This is so important and so brilliant. And also, I love the fact that there's, I think there's trouble in paradise between Joe and Mika. In fact, I don't know if you noticed, I always like to point out what their backgrounds look like because they're constantly lying to you. Joe Scarborough is not in Washington, D.C. He's in Florida. If you pay attention to the backgrounds, you can tell this. Yes, they have the White House behind him, but he's in their little garage set that they made. You can see a mirror on the side of the wall there if you look closely. A trained eye can see this to make it look like a bigger room than it is. See on the floor there? That's a mirror. That goes up against the walls to make the set look bigger, but he's in a pretty small room. And Mika's up in New York. You can tell because her background is different, right? Right there. She's in a different room. So first of all, why are they separate? Why are they not in the same room together down in Florida where they live and do their show pretending like they're in Washington, D.C.? But secondly, this little, dust up on air between the two of them, I think it's a little peek into their marriage. And I think sometimes, they hate each other. I mean, let's face it. If you were Mika Brzezinski, wouldn't you loathe him? But beyond the cheap, petty gossip that I do love to dwell in, can we just break this down for a minute? Because that right there, the trouble in paradise part, that's the least of it in terms of how brilliant this is and how revealing it is. This is the morning news show on NBC News's cable station. They're in the business of news. They're in the business of information and informing their audience about the major political events of the day. Right?
I want to talk about economy for a second. A few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, somebody who was going to be voting for Kamala Harris came up to me and said, oh, my God, Trump's going to win. I go, why is that? He goes, I went to the grocery store. Butter's over $3. I kind of laughed and I said, well, that's kind of reductive, isn't it? Said it to myself. To him,
now, that's my first thing that I love about this is that, the arrogant, pompous, sanctimonious Joe Scarborough with his hands crossed, the body language so good. That's kind of reductive, isn't it? So here's just some Joe Schmo out there coming up to him saying Trump's going to win because butter is over $3. And Joe immediately just waves it away and says, that's kind of, it's reductive. Who uses the word reductive other than these elite holes, right? So he immediately dismisses this person as a moron, as an idiot, for reductively believing that the price of butter is going to have anything to do with this election, right? I love that so much. But then Mika, who is all the way up in New York, tries to get a word in edgewise by correcting her husband on air about the real price of butter. And I love that too.
I smiled and I said, good point. But it actually, what everything we're hearing after the election is,
I'm just saying, the $7.
What's that?
See, now, so she first said it's $7, and he just talks right over her. Everyone at the table up there in New York with Mika starts laughing because they know that it's way more expensive than $3 too. And that finally gets his attention, still with the arms crossed, right? And he's like, what's that? I'm sorry. You know you're not supposed to interrupt me when I'm talking, woman.
The $7.
What's that? Butter is $7?
Yeah.
What? Is it framed in gold? Okay. Anyway,
where you go. But,
okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, my point is this.
So then he mocks her. Wait, what do you mean butter's $7? You know, I'm the man of the house. I never do any shopping. I'm not supposed to know these things. By the way, Mika doesn't do the shopping either, probably. But anyway, and he says he mocks her about the price of butter. And then he dismisses her too. He's like, well, anyway, my point is, it's like, don't bother me with the facts. Don't bother me with the truth. And by the way, I'm telling you that I found this to be a revelation. And so now don't undermine my point that I'm making here. So not only did he dismiss the guy in the store about the price of butter, but he's now dismissing his wife on national television, who's just sort of trying to inform that the price of the butter is that much more. And it's all, but he wants to wave it all away because he's got a bigger point to make.
This, Willie, the rent is too damn high. And this guy was saying the cost of butter is way damn too high.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a bit reductive. It ended up being just the point that if you look at the cost of groceries, if you look at the cost of gas, if you...
We don't need to see the rest of it, but this is the last part, where this is all a revelation, and not just the fact that butter is too high, but it's actually a motivating factor for people's vote. This is 2 days after the election. This is from this morning. 2 days after election night, Joe Scarborough is just now learning that this election was about the economy and about the cost of living, and the fact that Kamala Harris was responsible for it along with Joe Biden, and the people are pissed off about it. And there were no solutions and no actual understanding of what people are going through coming from Kamala Harris, and clearly not from them. He's just now figured this out. This is their news program. It starts the cable news program run by NBC News. Look at the peacock in the corner. It's NBC News. And the person who runs and hosts and coordinates and controls their morning news show for hours on this program is just now understanding this. I don't know. I've been in the news business. In fact, I do morning news. I do a morning news talk radio show for 4 hours every day in Washington, D.C. That's the business I'm in. I don't know what business Joe Scarborough is in, but it's not the same business. This is not the news business. Because the whole point of doing a news show is that you're supposed to be up to speed on what's going on around you and what's going on with the people who are watching or listening to your show. And you're supposed to inform. If you have spent this last 3.5 years in this country under Joe Biden covering news and politics and covering this last election, and you have not been engaged in a conversation about the cost of living and how it's affecting people's lives and the cost of goods and how it's affecting the election, you're not in the news business. You are literally involved in disinformation. Literally. I mean, I know that's thrown around a lot, usually thrown at people like me because I don't do my job the way Joe Scarborough does, but that's literally disinformation. If you have been covering this election and not talking about the price of butter accurately and how that affects voters. Which brings us to one other clip, ironically, from this morning, the same program. You just saw the admission from Joe Scarborough that they have basically been engaged in disinformation to their viewers by not talking real about the cost of living and products and how it affects the election. Yet on the same program, they said this.
Obviously, there's a lot of questions that's going to be asked and looked into, and really legitimate reasons to look within, for sure.
Right.
At the same time, the landscape is a sea of voices and websites and places to go for information that is simply not true, and then is backed up again and again and again and again until it becomes narrative.
You fight on the battlefield that is before you. Mm-hmm. And so if there is disinformation on the battlefield that is before you, you can run off of that battlefield screeching and crying with your arms thrown up in the air, or you can figure out how to engage in that battlefield and win. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's just that simple, you arrogant pompous ass. It's just that simple. So Mika is lamenting the fact that there's all these lies and disinformation and misinformation out there. And Joe says, yeah, that's right. It's out there. We just got to engage in it. When they literally have never had a conversation with their viewers or any of the brilliant people on their panel about the cost of butter and how it's affecting the vote. But their concern is that because when they say disinformation, they mean us. And oh, by the way, if I could just tag this up real fast with one other clip, as Joe and Mika wring their hands and scream and cry about all of the lies and disinformation out there, let me remind you about this little nugget from the same guy.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And you got.
That was in March, by the way, if you're looking at the election returns there. That was Super Tuesday when they were doing the Republican and Democrat convention primaries. In March, he was letting you know that this Joe Biden is the great. There was nothing wrong with him mentally or physically. In fact, he's at the top of his game. That's the same Joe Scarborough that just this morning was decrying, along with his wife in another state, decrying about the state of misinformation and disinformation in this country. You can't make it up. You can't. And yet, no repercussions, no accountability. They'll keep making their tens of millions of dollars for NBC. They're doing a hell of a job, guys. And if you rely on their shows for information, you literally don't know what's going on in this country politically. It's remarkable. But when it comes to not understanding how the economy affected this election, this sadly is not an outlier. Let's check over on CBS News with Margaret Brennan. Now, you'll remember her. She was one of the co-moderators of the vice presidential debate. She currently hosts Face the Nation on CBS News. And during the election night coverage, as they're all trying to come to terms with what happened in this election, and they're realizing that people didn't vote solely based on what this lady told them they should do because of January 6th or something, Margaret Brennan tried to lecture her viewers about the real state of the economy and what can be done about it.
Any country I have ever covered anywhere in the world, people vote on the 3 feet in front of them and the kitchen table they sit down at every day. And the economic issues are just so fundamental, and the experience of that. And, you know, Nora, you said earlier, maybe we overfocused on grocery prices. I think, you know, Donald Trump campaigns saying he's going to lower the price of bacon. The president of the United States has nothing to do with the price of bacon.
Or eggs, for that matter.
Or eggs, or any of it. But it's promising.
Gas.
I get you're uncomfortable, even though the head of the Federal Reserve and those guys, you don't quite know what they do back in Washington, but they're making your house more expensive because they're hiking up more, you know. You don't get that. You don't get the national number where Joe Biden is telling you, look, inflation is moderating and coming down, but you understand your grocery cart or your gas tank. And that personal experience just seems to be what at least people are using to justify their vote for Donald Trump.
Wow. So couple things here. So revealing. So at least she's acknowledging that people are voting because of the cost of living, but then she turns and ridicules and mocks any voter who doesn't quite understand macroeconomics in such a sophisticated way that Ms. Brennan does there on the set of CBS News. And they're all participating in the mockery. Oh, yeah, the price of bacon, right? And the price of eggs. That's why you're going to vote. You don't get that Joe Biden is saying that the inflation is coming down. Well, no, what we get is inflation went high because of the actions of Joe Biden. And we also get, Ms. Brennan, that Joe Biden for 3 years up until he was running for re-election this year was telling us that we were completely out of touch and that there was no inflation. And what are you talking about, Jack? This is the strongest economy in the world. They were pretending like there was no inflation. They were in denial. But you don't understand. You don't get that the Federal Reserve Chairman is doing this and that's what's making your home cost more, and that's what's making this. But you don't understand all of these things because you're not as smart as me, Margaret Brennan, sitting on the set of the CBS News. So when they finally do come to terms that the economy is a problem, they actually make fun of you for thinking that the president has anything to do with it, which is kind of funny because last I checked, Kamala Harris was running on the very same thing, saying that she was going to fix it. Didn't Kamala Harris say she was going to bring down the price of bacon? But she was going to do it by going after grocery stores who were price gouging, which is a complete and total fraudulent lie. But the best part of this clip right at the end, maybe you caught it. Listen.
You don't get that. You don't get the national number where Joe Biden is telling you, look, inflation is moderating and coming down, but you understand your grocery cart or your gas tank. And that personal experience just seems to be what at least people are using to justify their vote for Donald Trump.
That's it. Your personal experience is not what motivated you to vote for someone who had a stronger economy 4 years ago and has the policies put together that will actually implement solutions. So the next 4 years, this will get fixed. That's not why you're voting for Donald Trump. You're using your personal experience and the economy and the cost of living to justify your vote because you can't face the fact that you're voting for a racist, sexist, authoritarian Hitler. And we know he's a racist, sexist, authoritarian Hitler because we've been telling you that here on CBS News every single day for the last 8 years, but you still voted for him. So you're using your grocery bill and your grocery cart to justify your vote. How condescending and patronizing and sanctimonious and insulting to you. The good news is you do have alternatives. You don't have to watch those people. You can watch what we do here. But we don't demand that you go here. I know that you've got a lot of choices and you should sample other choices. In fact, I'm going to show you one of the options you've got because this is Mercedes Schlapp and she's a dear friend of mine. I've known her for years. And she was covering the election at the very same time that Margaret Brennan was. She was on the set of Newsmax while Margaret Brennan was on the set of CBS News. And Mercedes lent some insight into this dynamic that I think is a little more accurate, a little more empathetic. It hits a little closer to home, I think, for what really happened Tuesday night. You won't see this on CBS News or on MSNBC, but you should.
Think about that Trump supporter that was demonized, that was taken down, that was criticized, that was targeted, whether it was in their local school or by their community or by their crazy neighbor yelling at them because they put that Trump sign. Think about that person out there. That is the one. They are winning tonight. They're the ones that finally said, yes, my voice was heard. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of this particular election is that Donald Trump spoke to every single one of those union workers, McDonald's workers, the garbage man, you know, like those were the people he was talking to. That's right. And it resonated because they are tired of the elitists. They are tired of the globalists. They are tired of those individuals telling them how they should think, what they should believe, and how they shouldn't pray to their God. And you know what? The American people, they've spoken up tonight.
See, that's analysis that speaks to the people who just voted the way they voted on Tuesday. And if CBS News or NBC or any of the networks or any of the cables, if they were smart, they would get it. That they've been talking in a silo, in an echo chamber, They've been talking to themselves and they've been repelling people. When Joe Scarborough starts his show today, shocked at the price of butter and reaching the realization, the brand new revelation from God on high that, hey, maybe people voted this way because the economy sucks and they blame Biden and Harris for it. When that's a revelation today, 2 days after the election, something's very broken in cable and broadcast news. And they know how to fix it. I know they do, but they won't. And you should ask yourself why. Hey, for those of us who have been holding our breath right up until Tuesday night when we got the results, we can now exhale, right? We can now get to work. We can do something about the major issues this country is facing. And one of the most significant issue is our national debt. The fact is, our nation is broke, and the debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. So the strategy remains the same. You got to diversify your savings. So many things are out of control, out of our president's control too. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group is going to help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In fact, in a second, I'm going to tell you I can get some extra free money in your pocket from Birch Gold. First, you want to text my name, Larry, Larry. How do I spell this? Larry to 989898. And they're going to send you a free info kit on gold. And then right now, listen to this. Through Black Friday, you're going to receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased. That's incredible. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text Larry to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today.